DeJulius puts up a three. And a goal!
It's Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. We're presented by Bet Online. I'm your host, Russ Heltman of Cincinnati Bearcats on SI, joined by my co-host each and every week, twice a week, Neil Meyer from Cincinnati rival site, thefrontofficenews.com. We are brought to you by Bet Online, where this Thanksgiving holiday, you can head to the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, Bet Online. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with constant real-time odds and action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds and everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and boxing. Head to the website today to see why Bet Online is America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. Fully loaded show ready for everybody. Get into a lot of hoops talk today. We'll pick up the pieces and put the body in the casket on the Bearcats 2024 football season. What a disastrous finish it was over the final month plus of the season. A 5-game losing streak to end the campaign, 20-13 dud on Saturday against TCU. We'll start the show with that, and then we'll get to a much more fun topic at hand, which is the 6-0 Cincinnati Bearcats, number 3 defense in the country, number 1 point differential in the country, and the number 1 shooting team field goal percentage-wise in the country. This team could be very special. And they got another marker to show how special they can be on Tuesday against Villanova. A lot of interesting storylines, including one of the highest scoring players in the nation Cincinnati's going to have to shut down on Tuesday night. We'll slow him down. I don't know if they're going to be able to shut down Eric Dixon, but slowing him down is going to be imperative to getting that road win and a 7th consecutive win to open the season. We'll get to all that after these messages on Bearcat Blitz. Stick with us for football talk and then into the basketball side of things in the back half of the show. Neil, we'll bring you in now, my man. A 20-13 loss. We'll start the show with from Cincinnati football against TCU. Offense, kind of a broken record at this point with the downfield passing. Defense, once again, unable to get enough turnovers to flip the script in this game. And another game where Cincinnati outgains its opponent, but finds itself on the other end of the scoring margin. Just not good enough to end the season, Neil. Not even close to good enough for a team that Scott Satterfield looked us in the media, looked me in the eyes on Saturday night and said, amidst a 5-game losing streak and a season that ends with no bowl bid and is a definitive failure, given the expectations ending the season, that they are trending up, Neil, trending up as a program entering the 2024 offseason.
Yeah, it was a disastrous performance on Saturday night, Russ. Obviously, you mentioned the turnovers. That was the difference in this one. Cincinnati gets a huge stop on the opening drive, and then you have the special teams blunder again, which has been an issue for the last five or so weeks, presumably all
one
season.
Of the 10 to 15 best special teams units in the first 8 weeks of the season, 7 weeks to one of the 10 worst in the country. It's just unbelievable.
And that was the momentum changed right away. I mean, you get the 3 and out to start the game, and then Jamoy Mays tries to recover or return the punt. And I mean, I don't even know how to describe it, Russ. I don't know what he was really doing on that play, but that ball bounced, hit him. And then next thing you know is TCU recovered, and you get a 3 and out that turns into a 7-play scoring drive right off the rip. And then your defense played with their backs up against the wall for a majority of the game. They got red zone stops after turnovers. They drove down the field. They were holding TCU to field goals. Offense continued to struggle, Russ. Obviously, the conditions Saturday night weren't ideal, but we haven't seen a pass 30 yards downfield in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we saw maybe one on Saturday night, and it arguably was what? Maybe Evan Prater's best throw. that was maybe the best throw of the night Saturday night on what should have been a touchdown to Jamoy Mays. I mean, this offense continued.
I mean, they didn't complete. They completed one pass
over
of
10
15
yards.
plus yards. 15 plus yards. They completed one pass. And what did we talk about going into this game, Neil? They had to find an ability to get the receivers to separate and to find some soft points in this very sticky coverage defense from TCU. They never did that. Brendan Sorsby was, I would say, pretty good in this game. He did what he had to do to move the football, ran the ball well, had I think another really 90 had 93 yards rushing in this game, 12 carries, 93 yards. Ended the season, Neil, with 4 consecutive games of 70 plus PFF grades, was the highest graded offensive player in this one, and once again got no help from the scheme. I'm looking at you, Brad Glenn, and no help from his receivers. I'm looking at you, Brad Glenn. Brad Glenn's 2 biggest responsibilities have completely cratered down the back half of this season in both seasons. The receiver play in 2023 got worse as the season went on, and the receiver play in 2024 just disintegrated as the season went on. That falls at the feet of Brad Glenn. Those are his responsibilities. And I'm just really wondering, Neil, how you can have confidence in his ability as a wide receivers coach, given what we've seen from that unit over the past 2 years. I mean, Neil, they can't throw the ball more than 10 yards downfield. You cannot operate as a Big 12 offense if defenses know they can throw a 2 safety shell, a 3 safety zone coverage look above the middle of the field, and play cloud coverage downhill the entire time. It's impossible to consistently move the football at this level of the sport playing like that. And the Bearcats played with one hand tied behind their back for basically the entire end of October and all of November offensively. It's a shock that Brendan Sorsby was able to perform as well as he did, given how little help he had from the scheme and how little help he had from this receiving core. Brendan Sorsby, in my opinion, should want to transfer out of this situation. He won't, I don't think, because he's a loyal guy and he wants to stick with this program. But man, this offense completely failed him down the back half of the season.
Yeah, overall, I mean, you look at it, Brendan Sorsby announces he's going to come back next season, so that's something to keep an eye on as well. But overall, I mean,
that was just about the only positive from Saturday night was Brendan Sorsby saying he's sticking around.
There was no positives to take away. I mean, you feel bad for a guy like Corey Kiner.
Defense played well. I will say, we'll get to that, but the defense did play well.
Defense played well as well, but overall, the offensive side of the ball, Corey Kiner played his butt off. Thought he had a great ending to his Bearcat career, but overall, something needs to be adjusted in Cincinnati. Now, Scott Satterfield did allude to that they're going to reevaluate the whole program, not even just the special teams, which was where the question was at, kind of asked about, was reevaluating special teams. But he hands down said they're going to reevaluate top to bottom, go from there. So overall, it's going to be interesting to see what this offseason might look like. But Russ, you and I both know that there's going to be some changes probably made and some changes that probably should have been made probably sooner rather than later, to say the least.
Tyson Veit looks like a good hire. I think he did just about as well as he possibly could, given the pieces he had access to in his first year implementing this system. I don't know about Brad Glenn, though. I just don't know what positive things he's bringing to the table when you look at the results on the field. And Kerry Coombs is another guy that has to be seriously evaluated as well. He's done countless good things for this program. He has been a bastion of stability for this program. But it's a what have you done for me lately type of business. And he has not consistently brought his special teams units over the entirety of this 2-year run to its highest heights. And I mean, what are they doing, Neil, putting Mason Fletcher out there for the final 4 games of the season? Clearly not healthy. Clearly not the player he has normally been. Was losing about like 5, 6, 7 yards of total average punt distance this month compared to the first 2 months of the season. In a year where you have Max Fletcher that has 4 games of punting ability in a redshirt scenario available to you, it looks like they let loyalty to Mason Fletcher outweigh the talent and the ability on the field, because obviously Mason has been a warrior for this program. He is one of the stabilizing forces for this transition from the AAC to the Big 12, and you got to give him his flowers for that. But he was awful again on Saturday. Awful again. Once again, completely lacking in the field position game here. no ability to flip the field and turn things around on TCU. And it's just like 36.8 yards per punt, Neil. It's just not, it was not fair to Mason Fletcher, what they did to him, putting him out there for this month. You cannot convince me Mason Fletcher is healthy, putting up an average punt distance of 36.8 yards. And that's kind of what it looked like for the majority of this month.
Yeah, no, most certainly. I mean, Russ, you and I both know from covering
like,
this.
Why have Max Fletcher? Why have him even here right now? Like, what is the point of? I get why you have him here. It's frustrating, man. Like, you had 4 games to use Max Fletcher. You didn't access any of them, all amidst a 4-game stretch in November where your punt team is completely handicapping you in a league, in a sport where you're playing 1-score games almost every single week. It's a nip-tuck league. It's a 1 yard here, 1 yard there kind of league. You need every single advantage you could possibly muster. And the Bearcats just decided not to use Max Fletcher, who was one of the best punters in the nation last year and was, I mean, unless they're not telling us something, unless he's completely hurt, he's healthier than Mason Fletcher. Mason Fletcher's only healthy enough to give you 36.8 yards per punt on 5 punts. It's just, I don't get it. I don't get what their thought process was with the special teams in the back half of the season. On top of that, Neil, you got a guy in DJ Taylor for Arizona State who was one of their better punt returners, one of the better returners in the country when he was at Arizona State.
Much of an opportunity here at Cincinnati, to say the least.
I can't explain it.
But overall, on the special teams aspect too, I mean, you kind of could see the loyalty to Mason Fletcher. Obviously, he's been here for 4 years, came through.
That's the only reason you justify it, right, Neil? That's the only way to justify it, was loyalty to Mason.
But Russ, you and I both know Mason Fletcher went through the 2 years where he was hitting 50, 55-yard punts. And then this season, last season, he battled the groin injury for majority of the season that required a lot of rehab this offseason. And then on top of it, he definitely didn't look like himself the last month. He definitely didn't. And in a game where you have those redshirt opportunities where you could have used Mason or Max, it would have been interesting to see. But obviously, due to the loyalty to Mason and Mason's competitiveness, he would have liked to be out there and been maybe 100% healthy, but we still don't know the extent. Or even
he
if
hurt
he was
the team. That's the bottom line. He hurt the team's ability to make a bowl game. He hurt the team's ability to win. And if he thought he was healthy enough, if it was a question of pride and him just wanting to gut it out for the team, gutting it out for the team was not the most positive thing to do in this instance. And that's it's a lesser problem on top of so many other things. But special teams, I mean, it's a lesser problem, Neil, but it's hard to talk about this collapse, this 5-game losing streak to end the season without looking at special teams being a glaring reason for it. They were one of the best field position teams in the country entering November. And I'd have to look at the actual splits between this month and the rest of the season, but they got to be in the bottom 15, bottom 20 teams in total net field position throughout this entire month. And it destroyed their ability to move this program forward. I don't care what Scott Satterfield said about trending up. Anytime you lose 5 games in a row to close a season and miss out on a bowl game after starting 5-2 overall, that is the definition of trending down.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, I mean, Russ, obviously, you look back on this season, you start 5-2, you should have started 6-1. Realistically, you're 7 plays from being a 9-3, 8-4 ball club here. So overall, I mean, there's a lot of things that went south down the final month, but we talked about this on our other show last night, Russ. Realistically, there was only maybe 2 or 3 games on the schedule where Cincinnati was expected to lose. Colorado, Kansas State, and presumably Iowa State, which was a game that you and I had chalked as one that could go either way heading into this season. And then what happens? They're right there, and then the one big play happens before halftime because the inability to stop an offense, it seemed like, right before half, was the difference maker in this one. I mean, we saw it again on Saturday night. TCU scores before the half, then comes out and scores right again. So overall, on top of it, there were 7 plays maybe that you can count that if Cincinnati completes those 7 plays, they're for sure going bowling. But on top of it, they might be in contention for a Big 12 championship as well.
6 receivers caught passes in this game. Only 4 caught 3+ passes. Neil, they had 5 drops in this game. 5 drops. It was cold. I will say that. But it was cold all week, and they practiced in the cold all week. This was supposed to be a benefit for the Bearcats. It was supposed to be an edge, an advantage for the Bearcats playing in this type of weather, playing in the cold, playing in the freezing, playing in the snow. It was anything but an advantage here as Cincinnati just completely failed its quarterback. 75.7 overall grade for Brendan Sorsby. He was the highest graded player on PFF in this great game. 5 passes dropped on Saturday. Neil, they've dropped 10 passes, his receivers have, over the final 3 games of the season. Had 18 all season, 10 of those in the final 3 games of the season. 10 drops in the final 3 games. Somebody needs to be hitting the jugs machine a little harder, because that's just unacceptable. And that's like blatant defined drops. There were probably a couple other 50-50s that you could say were drops as well. So throughout that 3-game stretch. So it's just the receiver play, just terrible receiver play. On top of that, Neil, tight end play degraded down the stretch of the season. Joe Royer was not as impactful as he could have been, or his ceiling could have expected to be over the final stretch of the season. Did break the single season tight end catches mark set by Travis Kelce, so that was good to see. But Gavin Grover, didn't get much impact from him. You don't expect that, though, from a freshman throughout the season. Francis Sherman was an abject disaster at his position all season long. He was the lowest graded player once again in this game. I believe he's been the lowest graded player on offense 4 or 5 times this season. And you look at Francis Sherman. He's posted, Neil, a sub 52 PFF grade 6 times in the past 7 games. 6 times in the past 7 games. Blocking has been terrible from that position group. Flipping to the defense, though, solid all around. I thought Jared Bartlett played a very good game in this one. You got some strong performances from young guys, so that was another positive sign to carry in the next season. Think about Jonathan Thompson, Monte Whedon, and Simeon Coleman being the 3rd, 4th, and 5th highest graded players on this defense. Jordan Robinson, transfer cornerback, led the way with a 76.2 overall grade. Biggest question mark for me, though, Neil, defensively coming out of this one is, how good is Dante Corleone? And Neil, can we still say Dante Corleone is an elite Big 12 power conference defensive tackle? I'm going to tell you why. 63.7 grade in this game. Did not record a stat for the 2nd consecutive game. Or although I think he might have had one tackle in the loss against Kansas State. 63.7 overall. And Dante recorded a sub 75 grade in his final 7 consecutive games as a Bearcat. Just did not impact the bowl stretch, the bowl game hunting stretch at all, really. And to me, it's just feeling like similar with the Bengals Super Bowl season, similar with the playoff run, similar with all things in Cincinnati football at the collegiate and professional level right now. It feels like the elite Dante Corleone days were a long time ago. Has gone from a 93 overall PFF grade in 22 to a 78.8 PFF grade in 2023, all the way down to, let me pull this up here, Dante Corleone sitting at 78.1 this year. Excuse me. So he's gone from 93.8 to 83.3 down to 78.1 this year, 83.3 in 2023. I don't think you can call Dante Corleone an elite player in this league, Neil. Do you?
I mean, I still think you can, most certainly, but there was a lot of things that could have been done differently.
What is the evidence to show he's an elite player?
I mean, Russ, you look down on top of it. I mean, yeah, he might not have produced the numbers he wanted this season, but he was facing double and triple teams all season. Now the numbers,
he was facing those in the AAC as well.
Yes, but the Big 12 is a much significant step from where we were.
Right, so that makes him an elite player in the AAC and a good to sometimes great player in the Big 12, does it not?
I mean, it does, but overall, I mean, people still have to think about Dante Corleone. He still has the eligibility to come back. So people are all speculating that he might leave. He can still come back for one more year. Obviously, you have to think about the situation that he dealt with off the field. I don't think he was fully back to 2022 or 2023 conditioning until down the stretch. I mean, think about
Which
it.
Which he posted 75 plus grades down the stretch.
But overall, I still think he's an elite caliber. Even if he decides to leave this season, which is still undecided, he'll still find his way in the top 2-3 rounds, maybe even a 4th round draft pick this season. He is an elite defensive tackle prospect. Everybody knows that. But if he returns to Cincinnati, there's a chance he could get those numbers back up.
I think it would be a massive mistake to return to Cincinnati. He already made a mistake coming back to Cincinnati last year, giving up a year timeline that he could have added to his NFL contract and gotten to that second deal much faster. I don't see him. He's just not an elite player in this conference. You look at since the UCF performance where he had 3 pressures, 2 sacks, just 5 total pressures and 1 sack over the final 6 games of the season. Not good enough. Not good enough from a guy that you needed to be your all-star, impactful, first team, all Big 12 defense type of player in Dante Corleone this season. They just honestly did not get that from him throughout the campaign. We'll get to basketball right here on Bearcat Blitz, previewing the Villanova matchup to close out the show. Neil, Cincinnati taking on the Villanova Wildcats on Tuesday night. They are roughly a 60%-ish favorite to get the job done and stay undefeated in their final road contest of the 2024 non-conference slate. 61.1% matchup predictor favorite. They are currently number 9 on KenPom's rankings across the country. And Villanova is sitting at number 61 in KenPom's metrics. Obviously, a lot to work on from Wes Miller's view from last week's 18-point victory. It really shows you the dichotomy of the two programs we're talking about here, Neil, when you got Scott Satterfield telling me after a 5th straight loss, another loss at home, and a complete just disastrous finish to the 2024 season, telling me in the media that they're trending up. They're trending up after a loss. Meanwhile, Wes Miller, after an 18-point win, apologizes to the fans for having to pay to come see what they just watched. Very interesting dichotomy between those two programs. It's head-scratching as to why they're on completely different levels of success right now. Looking at this matchup, though, Neil, flipping back to a full view on basketball, Cincinnati 4-5 against Villanova since the 1949 season. A chance to get that number back to 500 overall. And even on the numbers, looking at this thing offensively, Neil, for me, the biggest question is, can Cincinnati carry its shooting over into this game against Villanova? And can they keep the pressure on opponents from the outside, or like other Villanova opponents on the outside, like they've done throughout this season? Villanova opponents have. They're 1-3 on the campaign when teams make at least 8 threes. Cincinnati's done that in 5 of their 6 games this year. Only made 6 against Morehead State. This is a chance, Neil, I think, to really shoot the ball well here, get moving and transition a little bit more. I'm guessing they're going to try to get Villanova out of their snail-like pace, 310th nationally in adjusted tempo, and really hunt some open shots for Simas Lukosius. I'm looking for them to take close to 30 threes in this game, much higher than their 23.7 average, and really just kind of outshoot and outgun Villanova from the outside. What do you think offensively?
Yeah, offensively, I'm going to look for that as well. Look for them to kind of shoot a little bit more from behind the perimeter than what they might have seen versus Alabama State or these teams in the past. But overall, I think the difference in this game, Russ, is going to be offensively. I think it's got to be the play of Dylan Mitchell. And the reason I say that is Eric Dixon is a fantastic player. I mean, he's one of the top scorers in the nation right now, 25 points a game roughly. Cincinnati's going to have their hands full. 6'8", 6'9", big physical forward in the front court. Something Cincinnati hasn't seen this season yet. But overall, I think the difference maker in this one, I think they're going to try and create some shots from behind the arc. Everybody knows this team is going to shoot the 3 ball. But I'm going to look at this game and try to see if they play inside. I think this could be a game where Dylan Mitchell goes off, and it's going to be interesting to see how does Arrington Page stay and handle a big-time forward when they have to make those rotations as well, considering the matchup versus Georgia Tech. He fouled out in 7 minutes. It's going to be interesting to see how does Cincinnati's front court contain a big physical player like Eric Dixon.
Eric Dixon, man, what a talent. Second nationally in scoring, 25.1 points per game. Nearly shooting over 52% from 2 and from 3 on over 6 shots each from those areas. He is a full floor problem. 6.6 rebounds, 2.3 assists at 6'8", 260 pounds. I mean, how is this guy not in the league right now? Seriously, how is he not in the league? Something's up right there. I don't know the full backstory on that. He should, at that size with this kind of metrics, he should definitely be playing in the NBA, as nobody, Neil, in the country holds a higher offensive win share mark than Dixon this season at 1.6. He's got the highest usage rate of any player in the Big East, 31.7%. And it's a huge test for Dylan Mitchell. Huge test for Dylan Mitchell. Good transition into that side of things. Second nationally, Mitchell is in Evan Miyakawa's defensive by Asian performance rating among individual players. He's only behind Cooper Flagg in that metric. I cannot wait, Neil, to see how these guys match up, how the length of Mitchell matches up with the size, the brute strength, and the back to the basket, back down ability that Dixon has as a guy that can largely create his own shot from anywhere on the floor, off the dribble, or just kind of out of a pivot foot stance motion if he's closer to the basket. If they stop Dixon, Neil, you hold him to under 20 points in this game, should have a really good opportunity to win this contest. They don't have anybody else that can really fill it up. Just 2 other double-digit scorers in terms of average this season. And on top of that, Neil, he's a guy that if you can just keep the ball out of his hands, that's easier said than done, obviously, but keep the ball out of his hands, ball denial as much as possible in the half court on Dixon, and just that patented Wes Miller man-to-man defense really going to be tested for the first time in this game up against a offensive team. It's very good in Villanova. 31st best offense nationally by offensive rating on Ken Palm this season. So very, very intriguing matchup. I cannot wait to watch this one. I got the Bearcats 71-65, a little bit of a slower paced matchup. I think they're going to have to play to that Villanova tempo a little bit more than the run and gun style that they're going to end up wanting to be over the full course of this season in Cincinnati. They get the job done though, and I think they either narrowly cover as 6-point favorites, or Villanova ends up covering the number if it's bigger than that. I could see this one being no more than 3-4 possessions at most, Neil. It's probably going to be pretty nip-tuck down the stretch.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a closer game than people expect, Russ. Obviously, a lot of things go into consideration, and Wes Miller even stated it following the Alabama State game that they're going to get a quote-unquote pissed-off Villanova team after starting the season 4-4. They lost 3 bye games this season, Columbia University and 2 others. So this Villanova team is going to be hungry. This is a huge quad 1 opportunity for Villanova and Cincinnati on the road in the Big East Big 12 Challenge. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a packed out environment and something that Cincinnati has not played in all season. You talk about the road environments that Cincinnati has played in thus far. Georgia Tech, Russ, everybody who knows who's watched that game, there was more Bearcat fans in attendance down in Atlanta than probably in...
It went Bearcats fans, empty seats, Georgia Tech fans. In order of size.
It went Bearcats fans, empty seats, Georgia Tech fans, and then East Carolina fans, for those who remember watching in the AAC where there was 35 people in the crowd, it felt like. But it felt like that matchup, it was all Bearcats fans. So overall, expect a big contingent of Bearcats fans to make the trip up the road to Philadelphia up there in Pennsylvania. But it's going to be an interesting matchup, Russ. And like you mentioned, it's going to be a 2-3 possession game to say the least because of how slow Villanova plays. But I don't see this game being a 100-90 game like we've seen in other games in the past. But this is going to be a game, Russ, where I don't think any team scores over 80 points, if we're being honest. I think it could be a 75-70 victory in favor of the Bearcats. But it's going to be a 2-3 possession game, like you mentioned. But for Cincinnati, there's a lot that rides on this. But I think they come away victorious and improve to 7-0.
Pick up where we left off on Thursday, recapping this game, see if Cincinnati stays undefeated and carries an undefeated road mark into conference play in a few weeks' time. Big game still on the horizon, though, including the crosstown shootout in a little less than 2 weeks. Plus, we will see which players have ultimately entered the transfer portal. We got signing day on Wednesday for football. We'll recap that as well, see where the Bearcats stand nationally with their recruiting class. and fully close the book on the 2024 football season, a football season that should be carrying into bowl season, but they fumbled that opportunity down the stretch of the campaign. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Elvin. This has been Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network.
This is the second. 15 seconds left. Shot clock off. 4-point game. DeJulius puts up a three.